By the time this goes live, everyone will have seen episode 3, and what a fucking episode. The build up to the battle in the last two episodes really pays off. So for a quick summary, the allies form their line, and just before it starts, in the short build up in this episode, Melisandre comes back, and the Dothraki are in the front, and she sets their swords on fire, and then they charge at the White Walkers. And then in what was for me a big shot, the Dothraki are absolutely wiped out. So Jorah and Ghost are the only survivors from this charge. As an opening for the battle, this worked really well. So the White Walkers attack, first the Unsullied in the centre, then the Northerners on the flanks. The dragons attack the White Walker lines a few times. The living get overrun and they're forced back into Winterfell. They use a trench to cover their retreat. For this and the majority of the episode, Jon and Dany are in the sky, and there's a lot of sort of misty shots. There's a few scenes with Sansa and Tyrion in the crypts of Winterfell. There's a dragon on dragon fight until the Night King gets knocked off his dragon. And the big shock is that when Dany tries to kill him with dragonfire, he's still alive. Jon Snow's sort of been forced to the ground. Since Rhaegal was wounded, he tries to chase the Night King. It doesn't really work out because the Night King then brings back the dead from the army of the living. And the big shock at the end, which has got some positive feedback, but a fair amount of controversy, was when Arya kills the Night King with the same drop knife technique she used when she was fighting Brienne in the last season. And although I was fairly skeptical in the last two episodes that there wasn't enough of the King's Landing plot, in retrospect the structure worked out pretty well, and now that the Night King story and the White Walker story wrapped up, the next 3 episodes will focus on the Cersei and the King's Landing plotline. And this was always sort of obvious because there was never a lot of explanation or depth to the Night King and the White Walker's plotline. But Cersei is a long-time character who's been in the show from the first episode, since the viewers know her, so they'll be much more invested in that plotline. I will say I was very skeptical in episode 2 and 3 that there wasn't enough of the conflict with Cersei, but the structure of the season has worked out really well, I think. In this episode though, a lot of the characters who were expected to die didn't, like Sir Davos, Podrick, Brienne, Tormund. To be honest, a lot of the deaths were very mid-tier and sort of irrelevant characters at this point. So Jorah, Ed, Dondarrion, Theon, Lyanna Mormont and Melisandre are the only deaths. And of these, only Theon and Ser Jorah actually mattered. So Jorah gets quite a poetic death, saving Dany at the end. As does Theon actually, who gets sort of a noble death, saving Bran. Or rather defends Bran from the White Walkers and then charges at the Night King. And the last 10 minutes of the episode, the hopelessness was captured really well. There's a lot of great shots with this sort of really powerful music behind it. Honestly, I do think this episode is getting over-criticised. As I've said, the plot was wrapped up really well. And there was a massive payoff to Arya's training in the House of Black and White in Braavos. The episode stands on its own very well. And in my opinion at least, this could actually be one of the best episodes of the season in its entirety. There was the side to it that was really an epic battle. But equally, the story side and the emotional side was really strong as well. There were a lot of moments for the smaller characters, and whenever they moved on to covering a different character's perspective, it never felt like it detracted, either from the overall plotline or the individual plotline of other characters. So overall, it was an exceptional episode. And the rest of the season has been set up really well, I think, to focus on the fight for the Iron Throne with Cersei.